and welcome to Show Up, Stand Out online visibility series for entrepreneurs. My name is Juliet Stapleton and I'm a visibility strategist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some serious issues that a lot of coaches, consultants, and service providers online just overlook. You know, it's great to have visibility, but it's also important to cover up your backside, basically. And that's why I'm bringing you an amazing young woman, Valerie Del Grosso, who is also, as she says, she's your super buff friend who is a lawyer. Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Hi, Juliet. Great. Thank you for having me.
I am delighted because, you know, there's a lot of things that I think maybe I don't even know, and I'm looking forward to discussing with you. But before we go into all that, maybe you can introduce yourself better than I just did to my audience and tell us, how did you end up doing what you're doing? What's your background and what do you do in your spare time?
Yes. Okay. So I'm Valerie Del Grosso, your friend who's a lawyer, and I work with online business owners, especially coaches, consultants, and VAs. And I help them get coverage for their business in a way that is intuitive and that fits the way they do business and the tone of their relationships with their clients, instead of doing the big, scary legalese and all of that stuff that lawyers get a bad reputation for. I have been practicing for 10 years now in Las Vegas, Nevada, so I've been at this a very long time, and I really, in the last couple of years especially, I've started working with coaches, and anyone who follows me will hear me say all the time that I believe so seriously and strongly in the power of coaching because it changed my own business and changed my own life. And I'm kind of on the hunt for my next great coach. So I've been really fortunate to work with people that are just brilliant, and I'd love to give back to this community. So that's how I got where I am today.
I think it's brilliant because, you know, working with anyone, I think that there's so much you can exchange in terms of giving back to them as well. And yes, something that so any kind of legal things, it's the same as financial things. They're usually so scary, in the perception of them is so scary. You're sort of like, no, I don't want to deal with this. I'll deal with this later. And then when things arise that you get in trouble or something that you overlooked and, you know, you should have really covered, it's too late at that point. You know, you really need to think ahead, right? So let's talk about this because this is an important issue. And as I said, a lot of people just put it sort of, you know, out of sight, out of mind. What do we as coaches need to, what do we need to cover to make sure that we're safe or that our online presence and online visibility is safe?
Definitely. Okay, so the first thing to know is that almost everything that goes wrong from a legal standpoint in a business, from a chargeback to kind of a nastygram from a competitor saying, hey, I'm already using that name, those are all things that actually can be prevented. And as with anything, when you're talking about prevention, it's always cheaper to do it first. So that's the key point, is there's nothing really to be afraid of because there are no surprises. I think where it gets difficult and where I'm a little different in how I'll present this to you today is that there's no magic legalese or list of requirements per se. And in fact, when I work with clients, the number one thing I tell them is, you know your business way better than I do or anyone else. And so let's just really have a conversation about what's going on and some of the issues that you come across. So there are different ways to approach this topic, but one that I think really resonates with people is that there are 5 people that are involved in every business decision that you make. And so those are yourself, of course, your team, your governments, your competitors or the marketplace, and finally, of course, your clients. And so every time you take a step in your business, you can think, which of those people would have an interest in how I go about doing this? And especially for new business owners, your government and your competitors / the marketplace are the ones that you want to watch out for. So for the government, probably everyone is so sick of hearing about privacy because of the new European Union rules. But that's the big one. That's kind of all the things you have to do in your business, there's only one that you must do. The rest are great to have, great for prevention, but a privacy policy is an absolute must-have. And you just need to slap that baby on your website and on your sales pages and just get it done. And just make sure that it explains to people exactly what you're doing with their personal information and how you're collecting it.
So I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting you, but this is because it is an interesting point, because just this week, I think something else came out in Europe about copyright. I don't know if it's as much affects us in terms of privacy policy, because we already dealt with it with GDPR, and I'm very sad about it. It destroyed my list, because I am in Europe, in Ireland. But is there a way? How detailed does it have to be? Or can you just take something generic and put it on and sort of tweak it? Or how detailed do you have to go into this?
So this is one of those areas where you have to be careful with a template or something that's generic, because you really want it to match the way you do business. So you can go on my website and look, and basically what I say to people is, here's where I get your information from. Here's what I do with it. Here are the services that I use to process your information, like Infusionsoft and Stealth Seminar, and just the different things that I use on my own WordPress site, and I link to their privacy policies. And then I give a list of things that people can request that I do, like to forget them, to correct their information, to let them know what I have. And I tell them, give me about 30 days. It would never take that long, but just in case. And I'll get you this information. Now, obviously, as you get bigger and you're trying different marketing tactics, like chatbots are going to be a really interesting one in the European Union for this reason. You'll have to just make sure you're engaging with the services that you use, like Facebook Ads Manager and all of that, have ways to make sure that you can comply with people's requests. So it is not rocket science, but it should really fit exactly how you're doing business and using your client's information.
That is extremely valuable, I think, because, there's so many things like chatbots, they're all coming out and everybody's saying it's so easy to use. And yet if there's any sort of underwater dangers that we don't know, and that scares a lot of people. I actually see a lot of people not using chatbots just because they don't understand what dangers there are. And they're just afraid to start using them, where they are missing out, because all you have to do is get a qualified advice, and then just go and implement it and find the ways not to step on anybody's toes, or know the ways to deal with any situations that occur. Is that right?
It's so true. And something that I also talk about in my practice is that having a business that shows these signs of transparency helps you build a brand that your clients love to trust. And so when people are buying high ticket coaching programs or whatever the case may be, they're not going to be put off by seeing that, hey, there's a pretty prominent link to a privacy policy, or, here's something in my chatbot that says, hey, it's great to meet you. You should check out my terms and my business policies here if you want. Like, that's not a turnoff, especially I think in today's world where people are in tune with even the biggest companies having information ripped off from them. So
that's actually a very good point, guys. If you're using chatbots, there is a menu that you can create. Let's say if you're using ManyChat, there's a menu you can create, and you can just have a link to your privacy policy there and then. You don't even need then to remember to send people anything, because it's there. And that's actually great advice. So one amazing tip already. Well, one of amazing tips already. Okay, well, let's talk then further. So what's next? The government.
All right. So we talked privacy. So that's kind of your government. That's number one to get out of the way. The next one, especially for newer business owners, are your competitors or your marketplace. So it just makes sense from a marketing and business building standpoint to understand who else is out in the market doing what you're doing, what kind of success are they having, are they getting traction, but most importantly, are they already using a name that you are considering using, or a name that's very similar to one that you're thinking of using. And everybody should be checking the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office maintains a database, but also you should check different countries that make that available to find out if anyone's using it. Because if someone has registered the name, that tells you that not only is this name important to them, but also they intend to make sure no one else uses it. And so you don't want to go out and brand and build and spend all of this money and fall in love with a name that you can't use. And so you can save yourself a very large headache and loss of momentum just by going out and making sure that you're not stepping on the toes of the people who have come before.
That's actually a great point. And I've experienced that, not myself personally, but I have witnessed a friend of mine and a coach who had an amazing group, 1,000 people in the group. Everybody half of them were his clients. And one day he just woke up and the group was archived because he's in Canada, but somebody in America had exactly the same name, and they reported the group, and the group had to be closed. And it took ages to reopen that group. And in fact, it was easier for him to just contact everybody and move them into a different group with a different name. So this is such a real point, and make sure that you are doing your research before starting out.
Absolutely. I have someone right now that I helped her trademark her name, and there's a group that opened, and that person went out and hired an attorney and is trying to make all these legal arguments, but the bottom line is just a quick search would have shown, and they both could have avoided the headache. So definitely know who else is out there, because it's just a best business practice. So that's your government, and that's your competition. The next thing would be your clients, and it's probably not a surprise, but when you're selling any kind of service, program, or package, you want to have a client agreement. It doesn't have to be, loaded, tiny text, any of that. It just really needs to lay out, hey, this is what this program does, this is what it doesn't, this is what's expected of you, and here's what's going to happen if we ever have a dispute about this. Unfortunately, and fortunately, we're doing business across state lines, international lines, and it's amazing. But it does make it very difficult to enforce our agreements. And what's happening is the credit card companies are becoming kind of this like de facto international court, where you have unskilled, non-lawyer people who are just looking and saying, I don't know, should we grant the chargeback or not? And so my client agreements are written to make it very easy for a credit card company to rule in my client's favor. And so, if for nothing else other than that reason, that's why you need to have a client agreement. Or for downloadable products or evergreen programs, you want to have terms of purchase that also lay out what your refund policy is really specifically.
And in your opinion, does the refund policy is up to an individual business discretion, or we should all have a refund policy on evergreen products?
That's actually a really great question. So I'll say in the modern internet connected part of the world, you have sort of a spectrum. You have very, I'll say, business friendly environments, and then you have very consumer friendly environments. And so for people who are doing business mostly in the US, I suggest the following, which would be you allow people a cooling off period, like 3 days, where they can change their mind. And that every state in the US is different, but that's, if they have a rule about it, that's usually what the rule is. Alternatively, if you're working with other business owners, you can say you're entering into this in your business capacity, because businesses usually don't have cooling off protection. Now, as you get outside the US into the EU, for example, Australia, New Zealand, those are places where you do want to check local law, but they tend to be more consumer friendly. And so you do want to offer some kind of no questions asked, right up front ability for people to get out. Now, that being said, I think you have to be careful about what you deliver to them during that time period, of course, because you have to just protect yourself. But I tell people this all the time, because I know there's, especially in the coaching industry, there's this feeling of when somebody makes a commitment, it's out of integrity, and these are two people or businesses that are coming together to do something. And so backing out is just out of line with that culture, I'll say. But if you look at the biggest companies in the world, and you look at their financial statements, it will say revenue, returns and exchanges, and chargebacks and uncollectible accounts. And it can be as much as 2%. So even the biggest companies in the world who have all the resources and the team to go after people who are not paying still find it necessary to just know, hey, we're going to write off some of this. And so for smaller business owners, especially dealing with cash flow issues, you need to account for those. Unfortunately, those people come across in the pricing model, because it will happen.
That is true. And you know what? This actually comes down to really honing into who your ideal client is and really connecting to people before just, so no, don't do this for the money. Do this for the connection. You can help people, but you can have that gut feeling if people are trustworthy or not. And I know that sometimes, once or twice you'll be wrong, but I think that you're right. Sometimes you just need to move on, and because you're spending a lot of, even on an energetic level, you're spending a lot of negative energy when you have to deal deal with any kind of financial issues, somebody's not paying you on time or somebody is not paying you at all, I personally just release clients like that because it stresses me out too much that I need to spend that energy to give, not to stress out about the money. So I understand.
So true.
And sometimes, guys, if you're working with international markets like myself, you can have a client somewhere in a country where their bank might be just rejecting I had an issue with the Stripe account with a few clients actually, that because I'm in Ireland and it's just straight away marked as fraud, and it was a disaster. But you know what? These are not the same situation, because that who you're working with has integrity. And I love the fact that you brought out this word, because it is down to people, but it's how you pick your clients initially will give you that ratio of these things happening in your life, I believe.
Exactly. Well, and Juliet, that brings up a really great point, which is my philosophy as a lawyer is that legal is quiet and it's in the background. And when it's working, you almost forget you have it. And the reason for that is that legal can be effective, but actually best business practices are 1,000 times more effective. And so those proper vetting and following your gut and doing what you know is right in your business is always going to protect you more than legal, which is just kind of a reactionary thing or a backstop.
That's so true. I agree with that 100%. And you know what? Again, on the energetic level, it's great too when you're picky with who you work and you don't go for the money, but you go for this energy exchange with the person, especially if you're working one-on-one, but even in a group scenario. And it just creates so much fulfillment in your life. And it's an opposite side of this, the cool thing about when you're focusing on the money, then you feel you're coming from a place of lack. And it just stresses you out too much. I always prefer to. Okay, so great. We have 3 down. So
the other 2 we'll go through quickly, and those are your team and you. So for your team, as you build and get more visibility, we've kind of talked or implied that your business is getting more exposure. So you want to make sure that it can withstand the visibility that you're bringing to it. And so usually as people grow, they bring on a team. And the issues with teams match the issues with relationships and friendships and all the things that happen when human beings come together and try and do a project together. And so the bottom line is simply that you want to make sure that your team very clearly understands what's expected of them and what the delivery requirement is. And you want to have things in place to make sure that if somebody bails at the last minute, you've got redundancy to help fix that. I'm helping a client right now who's having that issue. So within the United States, you want to make sure that these people are actually independent contractors and not employees. You can run into some tax issues. I'm sure other countries have something similar. So a team is definitely another area where you want to have your relationship documented, and you want to do it at a time when you're still friends and not when you're having disagreement about something. So that's a big one. And then finally, we get into business because we want to have those connections and we want to help people and put our gifts out in the world. But any business owner has probably gone through the phase of, burning the candle at both ends and just doing everything wrong. I have totally been there. Every single thing that they say not to do when you start a law firm, practiced it. But the thing about yourself is the number one thing is making sure that your finances are completely separate personally and business. And that if you set up a business entity, that will help make sure that any business snafus stay under the umbrella of the business and don't impact your personal life, because you want to retire and you want to, the money that you take out is hard earned and it's done, it's for a purpose to help your family or, build a certain lifestyle, and you want to make sure that things that are going on inside the business don't undermine your personal life that way. So separation is key. And I know that can be hard, especially in a new business.
So you're not talking actually in terms of registering as here in Ireland it's self-employed, or we have a limited company here. You're talking about just keeping things separately.
That's right. And so it could be with or without registration. If you are registered, you absolutely must keep them separate. If you're not registered, I still recommend keeping it separate, even just for tax reporting purposes and things like that.
I have to say, when I started my business for 5 years, I had this finances mixed up. So I had one account and I would, go for a coffee and I pay from that account and all my expenses went from that account. And then one year I said from the 1st of January, I'm just not doing this. And that was the best decision I made for myself because I actually was able to then practice the mindset of profits first, where the money comes into the business account and then I take the money out and I say, well, I deserved this and this is me. And you know what? And I want to take 200 more today. I will, because it felt like then I'm paying myself a salary, and it had a real empowering effect rather than, everything comes together and then you're sort of stressing out because you don't know, you don't actually have that real detailed track of what went where. So it was on a practical level absolutely the best decision I made. And my brain doesn't do finances very well. I need somebody to look after this. So if you're anyone like me, if you're an ENFP by your personality type, you're not able to follow your finances very well. I can tell you that. So keeping it separately and even getting somebody to look after, come and check it. And, this is a really, really good advice. So that's fantastic. So we have the 5 areas to look at. We have the government, which is your privacy. We have the competitors, which is your business name and things like that. Program names, I suppose, go into that area as well. We have the clients, where the agreement between what to expect. That's actually something that I remember the very first contract I saw was the contract basically was covering the coach's backside. That's all it was, and I kind maybe that's the way it is, because if you're getting coaching, unless you implement it, right, nothing's going to happen. So in a way, the coach can coach you, but you need to implement. But there's also other situations where I was speaking to people who had coaching programs that just didn't work for them, and they had to abandon them halfway because it just wasn't working, whether you implement or not. Maybe it wasn't even coaching, but there was something that didn't work out. And that's a little different again. But if you have the more detailed and the more the more detailed you lay it out in your contract, I suppose, the better and more friendlier you can go apart at the end. It's all about just not having this negativity, I suppose. Definitely. And and then we had number 4, which helped me out. What was number 4?
That was your team.
The team, exactly. So if you're hiring a VA or you're getting any kind of team, make sure you have agreements written out. And of course you need to train people. There's another thing that I find that people hire them, they might put all the documents in place, but they don't actually train people properly, and then they expect something else. And so it's up to you. If you have somebody who's not delivering, check out first if you trained them properly. This is a big, big advice. And then number 5 was yourself. So that's
the bottom line. That's right. And that's right. So I love the fact that you are in visibility, and I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say one of the kind of the transition point in my own business working with coaches was a free email course I did that was called Double Your Prices Legally and with Confidence, because going back to that topic of when you put yourself out in a big way in the world, you want to make sure that your business can withstand the exposure. And going through that list of 5 things whenever you make a business decision is just a really easy and intuitive way to make sure that you're getting your legal bases covered.
This is brilliant. So you have a gift for our audience as well.
I do. So when you go to the link that you're going to provide, you'll get a more detailed presentation showing exactly how to implement the things that we talked about, as well as the other things that you need for each one. And then once you're on the list, you will also get access to that free email course about doubling your prices confidently.
Fantastic, guys. The link, I'm going to have it in the description of this video, but the link is delgrossolaw.com/free-legal-tools. And this is where we're going to follow up with Valerie. Valerie, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was so well broken into pieces that anyone, even a person like me with, I don't do attention to detail. That's why I don't do law. It just becomes so clear. So I'm sure that a lot of people will get great value out of this. And guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact Valerie definitely go and definitely grab those tools and take that course. We all want to double our prices, and we want to do it the right way and as soon as possible as well. So don't delay. And yes, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments as well, and we'll get back to you and we'll answer them. Thank you so much for watching, Valerie. Thank you so much again for sharing your value. And guys, have a great day.